Hello, today is September 1st, 2022. I'm meeting today with Mr. Ken Calkins at his home in Loveland, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans History Project. Welcome, Ken, and thanks for sitting down today to tell your story.
Well, thank you, Brad. Glad to be here.
Very good. Let's start out, if we could. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your date of birth, where you're born, a little bit about your family.
All right. I was born on September 6, 1926. You'll know my birthday's coming up pretty soon here.
Yeah, 5 days, yeah.
I was born on a farm west of Evans, Colorado, not too far from Greeley, Colorado. We lived in that house on that farm for about 4 years, and then my father got another job in the mountains there, and shortly after that we moved to Loveland, Colorado in about 1930, I think, when I was about 4 years old there. I went to the schools in Loveland, Colorado, all the way through elementary school, high school, and then I went into the service directly after my high school days there. So.
Let me ask you a few questions during this time. Any siblings?
Yes, I do indeed. I was the youngest of 6 children there. There. My older brothers and sisters always said I was babied. I thought I was bullied in my family, but our family consisted of 3 girls, 3 sisters, 3 brothers, of whom I'm the youngest.
Okay,
there.
okay.
Really, we got, I talk about being bullied, really we got along fine. We had the normal disputes between siblings, you know how that is, but for the most part I had a good family. While I'm there, I will mention that my family, line on both sides, goes way back in America, back to the Mayflower there. And
you've traced them back that far, eh? Oh, wow.
Traced them back that far. And,
wow.
There, so we've been in America for a long time.
Yeah.
And in Colorado, my father was born in Nebraska, my mother in Iowa, but they both families moved to Colorado in the early 1900s and met and married there.
Wow.
And so then, as I say, I became the youngest child in the family.
Yeah. Well, one question I always like to ask your generation, do you have much memory, and was your family much affected by the Great Depression?
Yes, I do indeed. My family, I can't really remember the days before the Depression.
Sure, yeah.
But when I was 8, 10 years old, the Depression hit, and my father did indeed. He was buying he was a farmer at that time. He was buying a farm on which he'd gotten a loan from a bank and had to make monthly payments. Suddenly, when the Depression hit, there was no income there. Oh. He lost the farm to the bank, and by the way, he hated banks for the rest of his life. He called them a bunch of robbers. Well, we did, and even from then, let's see, that was around the earliest I can really remember is the early 1900s, say, and from about 1932 till 1937, 38, things were pretty rough. They were in America. Wow. Not just my family.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All of them. Yeah. And then at about that time, my father had, after losing the farm, he really took a course in carpentry. And he became a carpenter for the rest of his life there, and we were okay after that period.
Wow.
But the Depression, you've heard before, was rough on us Middle Americans.
Yeah. Oh, certainly. Yeah. Wow. Man. So you went through the school system here in Loveland, graduated from Loveland High. What year?
1944.
1944. Uh-huh. And then upon graduating, did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted. I might say my high school class was really quite patriotic. We were freshmen at the time of Pearl Harbor.
And sorry to interrupt you there, but do you remember that day and what you were thinking when you heard the news?
Well, I can remember, if you're from Loveland, the Rialto Theater a friend of mine and I had gone to a Sunday matinee at the Railroad Theatre. We came out and were headed down the street to the hangout for a Coke or whatever that was. A friend met us and said, "Hey, did you hear the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor?" Our question was, "What's Pearl Harbor?" We had no idea what Pearl Harbor was.
Right.
But that was the first we ever heard of the Second World War. Incidentally, the following day in our high school we were called to an assembly, and I can remember hearing President Roosevelt's Day of Infamy speech, which so my entire class felt patriotic. From then on, we had a lot of war bond drives, and
how was that life here back in the States with rationing and such?
Yeah, well, the rationing, it was strict, but for the most part, it didn't really hurt people.
Okay.
We didn't have any excess, we had to make do with things there, but yeah, we went through rationing, and I guess as you got later up in high school, I guess one of the main thing I remember was you couldn't get gasoline if you had it with a girl. You couldn't get gasoline for a car, even if you owned a car. But it made you live tight, but it didn't really hurt.
Yeah. Now you said you had 2 older brothers and 3 older sisters. Were any of them? Did any of them go into the war before you, or were you the only one in the family that?
No, I am. As I mentioned, the rank was girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. the older girl and boy were. But my older brother was really too old for the draft status at that time. My middle brother, his name was John there, and he was 3 years older than me. And John, I kind of like the memory of John there. But John was always kind of a rebel in our family. Whatever rules were, unless he saw a good reason for the rule, he was going to break it. There. Well, John and several of his friends, I might mention there was a National Guard unit in Loveland before that time. John and several of his friends enlisted at age 16 in the National Guard, lying about their age. Incidentally, the recruiter knew they were lying about their age, but because they were trained one day a week, one day a month, and to those fellows, 1 day's pay a month was a lot of money, so so they signed up when and let's see, I guess. Well, anyway, when the war did break out, all the National Guard's unit were immediately called up. So that brother was called up. He spent altogether about 5 years in the service, most of which was in the South Pacific, going from island to island there. And he got home, incidentally, about 2 weeks before I did.
Really?
And he thought I would go back to do my share there, but he was the only other one in the service beside me.
Now you said, okay, so you graduated. Then how soon after graduation did you enlist? Then in the service, what kind of?
Well, I enlisted before I graduated there. In the spring of 1944. Let me say that even before that, the year of my junior year in high school, in Loveland High School, they put on a school class in aviation, and I remember the principal, Ben Kitchen, taught that course there, and it was a very interesting course. I took the course, and at that time I decided I would like to be in the Air Corps. I was still a junior. Several of the seniors did enter the Air Corps, so I was very much interested in joining the Air Corps. In the spring of 1944, when I was a senior, the Air Corps put on a recruitment program with the slogan, "Men of 17." you too can wear a pair of silver wings.
Well, that was my next question. I was doing my math, and you were only 17, so did you have to get your folks to sign for you?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I did at that time. I had to get my folks to sign. Yeah. But I then signed up in the Air Corps with the intent and desire and belief that I would get through training, become a cadet, bombardier, or navigator. I really kind of had my eyes set on a navigator because I was good in math, and I thought there would be less competition than for a pilot there. So I planned on doing that. And therefore, when I was kind of jumping ahead, in my senior year, even before graduation, that was simply guys in my own kind of situation, got letters saying that we would be informed of where to go upon our graduation. So, and this one is easy to remember, on June 6th, 1944.
Oh, wow.
I was riding the train to Kansas to the induction center. Somewhere in Kansas, I got off the train and some news guys were calling out, "Extra, extra, Allies invade Normandy," on the day I entered the service there. Yeah. But I then went on to into the Air Corps through basic training, and they had a 3-month college program called College Training Detachment, I think it was, in Washington University in St. Louis, which was a good school. And as a matter of fact, later when I went to college, I got credit for that.
Oh, wow.
For that quarter in the service, so that helped me out a little bit there. I went in from there. Okay.
So you went to, did you go through basic and then to that training, or right to the college training?
Well, the Air Corps reversed it from in that time. Normally you went to basic training first and then college. Probably because they could rent lease the college dormitories in the summer better. We went to the college training first and then went to basic training. And that basic training was in Keyserfield, Mississippi.
Oh, jeez.
I've been born and raised in Colorado and never had any real bad climate. And I went to Keyserfield. Oh boy, what a shock that was to us there.
I'll bet. And much like many of your generation, growing up, you never really traveled too far away from home.
Right.
Now you're in Missouri, then Mississippi. Was there a tinge of homesickness at all, or how was that for you?
Well, there were times, when I missed my home and the guys I'd grown up with and so on, but it wasn't really very bad.
And how was that adjustment going from civilian life into military life for you?
Well, the first thing you had to learn was whatever the sergeant said is law. You do it. There, and I've always been a little bit independent there, and that was kind of a road to me that you don't have any independence in the military. You follow the rules there, and I did that. It wasn't a big shock, but I did certainly notice it there.
And then where'd you go from basic? What was your next stop then?
Okay, from basic training, I had thought that we were going to go into pre-flight training, which was the thing you did in the cadets in the Air Corps. Instead, I was still in Keyserfield there, and we spent weeks and weeks in KP duty and office duty and so on, doing nothing. I later realized that the Air Corps had really enlisted more cadets than they could really use and train, and at that time the war in Europe was beginning to phase down, not a whole lot, but down a little bit. So the Air Corps didn't really need these pilots there. And I was then later sent, well, about that time, sent to one of the training schools still in Keyserfield, Mississippi, where I went to airplane mechanic training school in Keyserfield there. And from there, I was sent to Minterfield, California. It was called. Minterfield was near Bakersfield, California, about 10 miles north, 15 miles north of Bakersfield in the San Joaquin Valley there. And there I worked, well, my training, as I recall in Keyserfield, emphasized the B-25 bomber. And Minterfield was an advanced training base for B-25 pilots there. The B-25, you probably recall, is kind of the younger brother to the B-24.
Right.
It was two-engine, twin-tail
Doolittle used on his raid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Pratt and Whitney 12-cylinder engines.
Yeah.
It was not one of the great airplanes, but it was a good airplane in World War II there. Yeah, and I worked on that as a mechanic there for him. Yeah.
Now, did you have any furloughs between all these training to come home, or?
Yes, I did. Let's say I can't remember for sure. When we finished basic, we came home for furlough, and then sometime when I don't remember the circumstance, when I was in a training program at Keyserfield, we had another furlough, and I got to come home. One thing that had crossed my mind earlier was, I don't know if anybody's ever done a program on hitchhiking in America.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But, when in the military, at least when I was in there, and I'm sure a lot of them, if the military officially transferred you from one base to another, they gave you an airplane ticket there. But if you wanted to go home or something like that, you hitchhiked. and that, I can remember hitchhiking from, well, let's see. I guess I don't remember the specific situation, but I did a lot of hitchhiking across this country, which was kind of interesting.
Oh, bet, yeah. Any interesting stories on any of those trips? That interesting people that picked you up, or?
Well, I don't really think of any.
Yeah. And of course, you had your uniform on.
Yes.
And
yes.
And that usually helped.
Oh, that was a big thing there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. People, and besides the servicemen, the public, they saw a serviceman out there with a thumb up. They were very good about picking up, giving them a ride there.
Wow.
I did an awful lot of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So now you're out in California. Is that where you stayed your entire service in, or did you go?
Almost my entire life, as I say, in Minterfield, near Bakersfield, California. There, that's in the San Joaquin Valley. There, and working as a mechanic on B-25s. Even there, Bakersfield was it was a nice city, but there were just too many servicemen for. But many towns across America at that time, you probably know, had a USO organization,
right.
United Service Organization, and that organization, tried to kind of make the troops feel a little better. There was there was a USO organization in Bakersfield, but it was kind of small, and there were usually more troops than there were girls in there. But it was not too far up over the pass. What was Mojave Pass, I think, down into North Hollywood, California.
Oh, right.
And many weekends we would go across the hitchhike down from Bakersfield down into North Hollywood, California just for a weekend, and the USO down there always had.
They had the famous Hollywood Canteen, did you guys?
Yes, I went there. That was a great place.
Wow. Now between the canteen and I don't know if any major USO shows came through, but did you ever see any celebrities?
Well, there were. I'm not sure they were real celebrities, but there were some of the stardust young girls trying to make it in Hollywood that would also come out and dance with the soldiers. I never had, there were too many for us to make any real inroads romantically, but they were nice. They'd like to entertain the soldiers to make them feel better.
Yeah. Now, you said you got into mechanics. Was that by choice or by some sort of testing, or how did you have a mechanical background?
Not really.
Really?
The Air Corps just told me that's what I was going to do.
Oh. And how was that for you? Did you enjoy it?
I did like what I got, and let's really face the fact. If you really want a real mechanic on a B-25, you've got a mechanic. we weren't real mechanics. Well, how do I say this? Our rating was mechanic, but the work we would do is as I say, it was B-25 training base for pilots there. Our group had, maybe 20 B-25s within our settlement. Each morning we would get a list of the number of B-25s that were going to be used that day. So we would go out, check those planes out. We'd check the oil, make sure the gasoline tanks were full, check the rudder controls on a plane, check the instruments, make sure that everything looked good there, run up the engines to a given speed there. Make sure that plane was satisfactory for use that day there. When the planes came back after being flown in the air by those cadets or by those pilots, we would receive the plane. We'd usually talk to the pilot, see if there was anything wrong. Again, check things over and make sure that things were fine. If there was any, a couple of times I did find some bird dents in the rudder, I think it was there, that we'd have to straighten out there. So it was very interesting work. I still wanted to be a pilot, but but if I couldn't be a pilot, that was still interesting work because I liked it.
Right. Now, prior to entering the service, had you ever been on an airplane? In an airplane on a ride?
Well, sort of. I said that the Air Corps was recruiting cadets. One of their slogans was, "Men of 17, you too can wear a pair of silver rings." Also, I remember now that if you did go down and sign up, they gave you some pass. And they had, I don't know the details, but you could take it back to your home town, and I did, and go out and get a free ride on I think it was a Cessna something there. And I did that, and that was my first.
Wow.
My only ride on an airplane before my military experience there.
And would you go up in these B-25s to do checks as well, or
yes?
Yeah.
You could always, whatever the planes you were assigned to, you could go up with them if you wanted to. At first, that seemed exciting. I'd do that, and I could even fantasize that I was flying that plane. After a while, it got kind of old, so you stopped doing that very much. But we could fly in our plane where we wanted to. Yeah.
And what was talk a little bit about life on the base? Your living arrangements, the food, what you guys did when you weren't on duty, just a day in the life on the base. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, it's a military life. And by that I mean, as I said earlier, yeah, you followed orders there. You were assigned a bunk on in a barracks. You had a sergeant was in charge of that barracks. You always, every morning before you left, you had to make your bed, and the sheet had, the cover had to be tight. There you had, that sergeant had requirements for bed making. You know, when I was raised in town, I think I ever made a bed in my life until I got in the military. But you had to make your bed. You had to keep your area of the barracks clean. You had to hang up your clothes you couldn't go off during the day and leave your clothes, lying on the bed. You had to hang them up there. You had to, periodically, I don't remember the details, but periodically on Saturdays especially, you might have an inspection, and you had to make sure your shoes were shined and looked good there. So, yeah. I guess that's a main thing I remember about the food.
Yeah, how'd that compare to Mom's home cooking?
Well, it was only food, which was nutritious, I'm sure, but not especially tasty. You did kind of hate to miss your mother's cooking there, wasn't it? Yeah. But you got along. I do. I mentioned my friend there. Sometime, let's see, it was, as I say, I think probably in 1940, March 1945, when I got the letter that my good friend Bill Jump had been killed, and I can remember sitting on my bed, bunch, and just crying because Bill had left there. Yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine the sadness of losing a friend like that. He was in Europe. Killed in Europe.
Yes.
How the circumstances of what happened?
I don't really, I've never really learned the exact circumstances. The assumption is, and my assumption is, when I got the letter from my mother saying he had died there, that he had been killed in action. One of my friends later, and the friend's no longer living, I'm not sure how he got his information, said that instead of being killed in action, he had actually died from some disease.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know the exact situation.
Nonetheless, it was sad, for sure.
It was sad. Yeah. Thinking bunks made me think of another
please.
incident there. At that time, much more than here, it was expected when you were an adult, you smoked. When you graduated from high school, you started smoking. If you didn't smoke, you were a baby, you were a kid. Everybody smoked. When ladies had dinner parties, they'd have an ashtray at to use after dinner. Well, I was, sometime I can't remember exactly when, but when I was at Minnerfield, I said, well, I'm grown up now, I need to start smoking. So I got I think I was in Kieserfield, basic training, yeah. So I got my pack of cigarettes and I started smoking. Well, about the second day, I was sitting on a bunk smoking, and I said, I don't even like the taste of these things. Why do I smoke just because somebody tells me to? And I stopped. I never smoked after that.
Oh, good.
And it was 20 years later before the military said it was bad for you. Yeah. But I quit smoking on my own. Sure glad I did.
Thank goodness. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Well, back on the base then, what would you guys do to kill time when you weren't on duty? What for entertainment and fill the time?
That was hard to do. Yeah, you did. Yeah. At first, it was all exciting, and there. After a while, it was just kind of another job, just kind of boring, and when your plane went up in the morning, you didn't really have anything to do until it came back in the afternoon there. So I don't know, there was a tennis court there. I did remember playing some tennis. There was some of my buddies. I was never especially good, so I didn't win anything, but we did do some of that. You might spend that time writing letters to your home, and that, of course, was another thing. Telephones were too expensive to use.
And of course,
there was no internet.
Of course, like today where we've got cell phones and instant messages and computers, everything's instant. Your only choice was letters.
Yeah, it was letters, yeah. And my mother and one of my older sisters was good about writing to me, and that might be a time when you would write back to them, tell something, tell what you were doing.
Now, would you communicate with your brother overseas, or would you get that information from home?
I got all that through my mother.
Yeah.
I don't remember that my brother overseas that I ever corresponded directly, but my mother was very good about writing to both of us, and she would give the information there.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't easy. There was two of you. I mean, you were in safer conditions, obviously, but
yes.
I can't imagine the worry your mom must have had with your brother.
You've probably heard of the American War Mothers. Yeah, that was an organization, as the name indicates. So I say Loveland was my hometown, and Loveland had a chapter of the American War Mothers, and my mother was a very conscientious member of that group. And you might remember that the War Mothers had signs in their windows, with stars for their sons. My mother was very proud to have a sign with 2 blue stars there.
And blue meant that they were serving. Gold meant that they had died in it.
That they had died, right? You're right. Gold star was deceased.
Yeah.
And my mother was proud to have 2 blue stars on her window.
Oh boy! Wow.
Yeah.
And so now in California, what unit were you in? What Air Force would that have been? Do you have that information? Or
it was a training command. I can't remember.
That's fine. Yeah. And
later I realized I should have kept some real records about those days, but when you got discharged, you want to throw all that stuff away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Understandable.
So I didn't really keep the things I should have kept at that time.
That's understandable. You just wanted to move on with life, and Through the years, did you ever keep in touch with any of those guys you served with?
Well, for a while I did, but really not too long, and I lost track of them, most of them, pretty early, I'm afraid.
Well, life gets in the way.
It does.
Yeah. So, were you there both on VE Day and VJ Day? Remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
What do you remember the celebrations on each of those announcements? Was there a celebration there on the base?
There weren't really many celebrations on the base. But we went in, at that time, just went into Bakersfield, California, and the people the general public were out in the street, cheering and waving and dancing and so on. You've seen about that famous picture about the sailor kissing the girl. Well, I never saw that, but certainly people were just great. Mostly VJ Day.
You're right.
VE Day,
Still had...
we still had VJ coming up. Now, at that time, I know in our area, we knew we were going to defeat the Japanese, but it was just a matter of when. Now, as you recall, the atomic bomb was dropped in August, I think it was, of 1945. There has been some criticism in the United States about using the atomic bomb and killing 100,000 Japanese. Well, I guess many of us felt, well, if we had had to invade Japan, we would have lost 100,000 American troops.
Easily.
Yeah.
They were saying upwards of a
better
million.
them than us.
Yeah.
So, but I do remember the invasion I remember the victory in Europe, and then the invasion of Japan, the atomic bombs that were dropped there.
When they said they dropped this big bomb, could you understand what this thing was? I mean, there was this massive bomb that killed 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Could you comprehend what it was?
No, I could not at that time.
Yeah.
And most of them, I would say, 99% of Americans had no concept of what a nuclear weapon was.
Right. Oh boy. Now, was there any plans for, we didn't know when the war was going to end. Were you slated to go overseas, or was it, or did?
Well, earlier, really, in a sense, I was kind of disappointed because I had thought I would be sent overseas, and I never was.
Yeah.
And, in the Army, they never gave me a reason why. But yeah, I was never sent overseas to do anything, and in a sense, I kind of felt as if I was not doing everything I could.
Like we talked about off camera, it was a crapshoot. You never, when you walked out your door to go serve, you didn't know what laid ahead. You just know you were going off. So that in itself is pretty special as far as I'm concerned, of course. Yeah. So then the bombs drop. Japan finally surrenders. Then how much longer were you in the service before you were discharged then?
Yeah. Well, as we can all understand, at that time, then the military had a great big bureaucratic problem to discharge all of these people they didn't need anymore and get it all done in an organized way. I stayed at Miller Field until sometime in early November.
Oh wow, that long?
Yeah, about more than 2 months after the end of the war there, and then early November, they sent me back to Lowry Field outside of Denver, Colorado. They sent me on a railroad that time. I didn't have to. I got a railroad back. And I was discharged on November. Sometime in early November 1945. Yeah. And as I said, that was after less than 2 years in the military.
Yeah,
My brother, who'd spent 5 years, only got home about 2 weeks before I did. Yeah.
Well, it must have been nice to get home and see the family, and particularly your brother that made it through the war. And,
Sure, it was. It was great to get home,
Yeah. And then, so you're home now. Where'd you go from there? Did it take some time off, go right to work, go to school? What happened once you got home?
I was still, still just 19, I guess, there. And you've probably heard of the GI Bill. The Congress enacted a bill. I don't know when it was enacted, but it gave veterans, awarded them a certain it would be their tuition to a college, a certain amount of money per month, and several other things. There were some conditions depending upon your period of service and so on. But earlier, when I was in high school, as I said, we were kind of a poor family, and my goal was to go to college, but I didn't really have any sure path to get there. Well, the GI Bill was a great help to me.
Sure.
Because I used it to enroll in college, and I was discharged in November, I said, and the following January, I enrolled in the University of Colorado on the GI Bill for going there then. Yeah.
And how was that? I heard too during that time period with all the boys coming home, the colleges were crowded. There was no place to live, and it just all these people returning. And
well, you are right there. There were a whole lot more friends. Even if you weren't going to college, you're looking for a job.
Yeah, right.
There were just a million other guys looking for jobs too, right. And it wasn't easy. Yeah. But I was mostly interested in college there, and the GI Bill helped me out. But even in college, there were all these GI Bills, and you've probably heard of concert villages. Well,
oh, right, yeah.
I think, I won't say most, many colleges had a little village of traders, essentially.
Right, yeah.
Where veterans lived, and I enrolled at the University of Colorado in Boulder.
Okay.
And we had a village of veterans there, traders where veterans lived there. I never lived in any, but we did have one big one there.
And what was your major in college?
Well, I kind of amusing in a way. In high school, I wasn't even sure I was going to get to go to college, so I hadn't really thought an awful lot about my career there. But I know my high school science teacher in Loveland High School, a fellow named Frank Lee, taught science in high school, and he had told me one time that, boy, the field of chemistry was going to be really great after the war. He predicted that the field of plastics is going to really grow. Well, it turned out he was right, and so when I enrolled in college, I thought I was going to be a chemist, and in the enrollment paper, she asked me what I wanted to enroll in. I said, or what I wanted to be. Anyway, I said chemistry, and the clerk said. She didn't know anything any more than I did. Do you want that in the School of Arts and Science or in the School of Engineering? Well, an artist? I didn't want arts and science. But engineering sounded pretty, masculine. So I said I wanted an engineering school. Well, it turns out I wasn't enrolled in chemistry, I was enrolled in chemical engineering. By the time I figured that out, I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Really?
So I did, yeah. Huh. So I stayed in chemical engineering at the University of Colorado.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting story, how that came about, huh? Yeah. And that's what you went on to do for a career then?
Yes, indeed. I graduated from CU in late May of 1949 there, and I went immediately to work. Well, even that, in a way, my junior year there, I saw the seniors graduating. They all had a number of offers to choose between. Employment were really good that year, so they all had a good deal. The following year, when I graduated, was way down. Most of us had very few offers of employment there. Did you ever hear of Gates Rubber Company? Uh-huh. I remember one of the offers was from Gates, but that was considered a dead end for an engineer. So I didn't take that, and I don't remember, the other one was bad.
Oh, boy.
And a friend had said, and I thought this was true, I was really quite interested in the petrochemical field. And a fellow said, well, the Gulf Coast, around Houston, Galveston, Texas, is really a booming area. So I decided to go down there and look for a job. I started out to hitchhike. On the way, one of my college friends lived in Amarillo, Texas, and he invited me to stop at their house overnight. I did that, and while I was there, his father introduced me to a company that he's a building manager, and he introduced me to a company that leased offices in his building, and they hired me.
Wow.
But the company, well, they had several plants in the Southwest, and the plant that they were hiring me for was in Guyman, Oklahoma. Now, I don't know if you know the Oklahoma Panhandle. Guyman, Oklahoma is no place for a Colorado boy to live. But I had a good job there, so I took that job, and I worked at that job in Guyman, Oklahoma in a natural gasoline production plant for 3 years there before I went on.
And where'd you go on? What was the next assignment, next job or assignment?
When actually that, as I said, it was 1949. I still wanted to return to Colorado there. I heard from somebody, I don't think my mother, whatever, that some new technical plant was being built by the Atomic Energy Commission outside of Denver, Colorado. This was in 1952. So I came up here on a vacation, whatever it was, some way, and I applied for that plant in 1952. Well, the employment recruiter there said, well, we have filled all of our technical positions, but we will keep your file on record, and we will notify you if we have an opening. Well, we all know what that means. They throw it in a wastebasket, right? So I gave up on that there. I did take an interim job in the Texas Panhandle, not better. In 1945, suddenly, out of the blue, I got a letter from Dow Chemicals Company, which operated that plant in Denver, saying they had reviewed their files on technical people, and they wondered if I was still interested in a job.
Oh, wow.
I was amazed.
Now, you said 45, you meant 55.
55,
yeah.
I'm sorry, 55.
Wow.
Yeah, 55. And so I replied saying yes I was. They interviewed me, and I went to work then at the Rocky Flats plant.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you've know about the Rocky Flats plant. Yeah, the Rocky Flats plant was an atomic energy plant. By the way, I told when they interviewed me for the job, I told them, gee, I've just worked in the petrochemical industry. I don't know anything about atomic energy. And he said, that's all right. Nobody else does either. So we have to trade them.
Wow.
And I did. I was hired then to work for Dow Chemical Company in the Rocky Flats plant of Colorado in 1955. Yes. And we moved back here then. Yeah. And I did. We moved back. I worked at the Rocky Flats plant for 35 years before retiring. And it was very interesting work. I really liked that work. It was quite different from, the petrochemical business that I'd been in earlier, but once I got into it, I found it was very challenging work. Yeah, very interesting. I liked it.
Wow.
Had good. Dow Chemical Company was a good employer in that field. They were strictly a government contractor.
Yeah.
It was basically a government plant there who owned it, and they told Dow what to do. But we really worked for Dow Chemical Company as far as their checks and where they came from there. But I was happy with that. As I say, I worked for 35 years. Although Dow left it before the end of that 35 years, and some other companies took over there. But I worked there until I retired in 1990 something.
Wow. Well, they say, you know, over the years they've discovered a lot of issues with the site and what have you. You've never had any health-related issues from working out there?
No.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that down was just newspapers selling.
Was it?
Selling papers, because the I was in the, well, most technical facilities have a research and development division. I spent, well, in 35 years you can have a lot of different jobs, but most of the time I worked in the development portion of the technology. And we worked on processes. We solved any technical problems. We worked on quality control, etc. there, and basically we never had any injuries coming from radioactive materials. We had 2 lost time injuries during the time I worked there. One of them was a fella, running on his lunchtime, exercising on the access road. A car hit him and killed him.
Oh,
Just
boy.
terrible thing. The other was another fall something. It had nothing to do with technology, but anyway. The Rockefeller plant was really a safe plant to work on. We spent a lot of taxpayer money making sure that everything was safe and that the workers were safe. The support people were safe. It was indeed very safe. I had no problem there.
Oh, good. Now, you had mentioned earlier, I picked up on this when you were down in Texas and took the job up in Colorado, that we moved up here. Had you married?
Yes, I did.
We need to back up and talk about how you met your wife and wooed her and tell that story.
Well, all right. That might be backing up a long time.
Yeah, okay.
So I said I was born and raised in Loveland. There. I went to University of Colorado from 1945 until I graduated. And many weekends, not all, but many weekends I would come back to Loveland, for the weekend.
Yeah.
There. And, visit some old buddies. Some were going to CSU and some really State Teachers College out there. So
Really?
we kind of got together. And my bed, hiking the mountains there. Anyway, came to Loveland. Well, earlier than that, I guess I should have said, I went to the Methodist Church in Loveland. Another family went to the Methodist Church, but their daughter went to Johnstown High School. If you know where Johnstown is, not too far away there. I never really talked to her, but I knew who she was there. And one day I was in the one weekend day, I'd come up from CU. I was in the drugstore, and this girl and her cousin came in there. Their fathers were meeting in the Elks Club or something like that. There. Anyway, they came in, and I asked this girl if she'd like to have a Coke. And she did, and so we got to talk together. And the one girl, her name was Barbara Urich there. And then I think another weekend I saw her. Anyway, then a few weeks later, I don't know the exact date, but this girl, when I saw her in the drugstore, she said, well, she was going to Johnstown High School, and she said, well, they were having a homecoming dance, would I like to go to the homecoming dance with her?
Huh.
So I said, well, okay, I accepted. Anyway, the point was we went from there. She graduated from high school in 1947 when I was still at CSU. She went, I don't know if you ever heard of a Colorado Women's College, that was in Denver. She went there and she graduated from Colorado Women's College the same year I graduated from CU there. And in the meantime, we had a number of dates along the way there, and I was kind of interested in her. And then, let's see what. Anyway, I was in well, there, I was working in Oklahoma, and I asked her to marry me after she had graduated from CWC. And she accepted, and so we were married in August of 1950. Now, I was still working in the Oklahoma Panhandle in 1950. So we got married in 1950, and I took her down to the Oklahoma Panhandle. Well, she she didn't think that was any place for humans to live. Well, I don't want to be too bad on Oklahoma, but for a boy, people raised in Colorado, it's not very good. So anyway, I took her down there, and then in 1950, then we came back here then in 1955. And, yeah. She was glad to be back.
So, 72 years then?
Yep. Last 2 weeks ago.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, 72 years.
Wow. Talk about children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
We have just one daughter.
One daughter?
Yeah. Who was a fine girl. She attended CSU and veterinary medicine. She married a classmate, another veterinarian from CSU. They actually live in Wisconsin there. And she has, although she spends a lot of her time on a family farm in Colorado. And they have two daughters, our granddaughters. One is 31 years old, the other is, I think, 28 years old. Neither one of them is married. I think they have some boyfriends, but they aren't married yet. The 31-year-old lives and works in California, and the 48 years old is getting her bachelor's degree in environmental science in University of Wisconsin at Madison. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's most of our family.
Yeah. Well, Ken, as we start to wind down this interview, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about? Any other stories that floated to the top as we've been sitting here talking, or do you think we kind of caught your story? I know we probably only got the tip of the mountain of your story, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about that I didn't ask you? Or
well, I don't really think very much that people might be interested in.
Well, this is for you and the family, so
yeah, our family.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't really think of anything.
Yeah. Well, the last question I always like to ask with these interviews is, as you look back on that period of time when you were in the Air Corps, and how do you look at that? Did it change your life, play a role in your life, affect your life at all? Or was it just simply a chapter in your life that you lived through? How would you answer that, do you think?
Well, I would say I was proud to serve my country in the Army Air Corps in World War II. Yes, it took a little time there, but I was proud to do that there. I like both ex-soldiers there, ex-soldiers, I didn't like being in the Army, but I think overall, it was a really fun experience there. I'm glad I went through it there. I've been I've been overall happy with my life.
Yeah.
There's some things that might have gone better. I might have done better, but for the most part, I'm happy with my life. I think I'm ready.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Very good. Well, Ken, I want to thank you for sitting down here today to tell your story, but more importantly, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, thank you, Brad.